In this video, we'll discuss the ethical management matrix, which helps us balance the needs of stakeholders and shareholders. Now, those who teach business ethics often discuss this epic battle between shareholders and stakeholders, each vying for a larger portion of the organization's resources. However, what if I told you that shareholders and stakeholders are not actually in this epic battle, but are rather actually in a symbiotic relationship? Well, let me explain by using every business professor's favorite tool, the 2x2 matrix. In this matrix, we have stakeholder value in the vertical axis and shareholder value in the horizontal axis. Now, if an organization is not providing value to either stakeholders or shareholders, management is actually incompetent and needs to be fired. However, now if the organization is providing value to stakeholders but not shareholders, investors are going to flee. And this means less money for the organization to grow and innovate, which in turn will also hurt the stakeholders. On the flip side, if the organization is providing value to shareholders but not stakeholders, those stakeholders will also withhold their support to the organization. This means more regulation, employee turnover, and customers are going to flee, all of which is bad for shareholders. Good management then recognizes that the best way to take care of shareholders is to take care of stakeholders, and vice versa. Let me give you an example of how this works. In October of 1987, Paul O'Neill became the CEO of Alcoa, the world's largest manufacturer of aluminum products. In his initial press conference, Mr. O'Neill stated that safety would become Alcoa's #1 priority. And investors did not originally like this policy, and many of them sold their shares. One investment advisor actually recalls telling clients to sell all of their shares of Alcoa because Alcoa had hired a hippie as the CEO. That investor actually later said it was the biggest mistake of his career. Why? Well, 1 year later, profits at Alcoa hit a record high. And by the time O'Neill retired 15 years later, Alcoa's profits were 5 times what they were when he started. So you see, O'Neill proved that taking care of stakeholders like employees is good for shareholders too. Let me share another example. Sir Richard Branson started a record store in 1971. He then started a record label, Virgin Records, in 1972. He then started an airline in 1984 and a mobile phone company in 1999, and all of these businesses have been fairly successful. Now, what is the secret to his success? Well, Sir Richard Branson's business mantra is, if you put employees first, they will take care of your customers. If your customers are treated well, they will treat your shareholders well. So again, another example of if you treat stakeholders well, your shareholders are going to be taken care of as well. So this idea is also taking off more broadly. So here's some trending business ideas that recognize that treating stakeholders well is also good for shareholders. So the first idea is social entrepreneurship. Social entrepreneurs see a social need in the world and they attempt to use the power of business to solve that problem. Tom's Shoes is one example of that kind of business. Cotopaxi is another great example of that kind of business. Larger companies are also investing more in what we call corporate social responsibility. These programs use business resources to solve social and environmental issues. And the most successful corporate social responsibility programs tie solving these problems to the core of their business. Finally, there's a growing trend of investors using social and environmental impact as part of their investment criteria. This trend is called social investing. Now, all of these trends are happening because more and more business leaders are recognizing that social good is also good for business.